Olá, amigos e amigas, eu sou o Nando Show. Hoje estou aqui com o Rob Moore, CEO da Centros, para a gente trocar uma ideia não só sobre Valorant, mas sobre todo o projeto da organização. Rob, first of all, thank you very much for being here to, take this interview with me today. First of all, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've had a long morning. I woke up, I was on Plat Chat this morning. For those of you who didn't see, at some point I looked like I was in witness protection as the lights were all off, but we had a good time.
Amazing. Rob, first of all, Sentinels is a huge brand, not only for Valorant, but for the whole North American esports scene. And having a team right now, after a really good 2024, 2025 wasn't the best internationally for Sentinels in Valorant, but I want to hear from you. How was this year in your perspective, from results, having two grand finals, a third place in Americas, and then internationally, unfortunately, not the results Sentinels expected?
Yeah, I think, we came out and started the year better than we expected, losing TenZ and Saucy, who are obviously two of the best to ever play the game. And so we expected to get off to a slow start, and we actually got off to a faster start, made it to the finals of the kickoff tournament in Americas, came in second, qualified for Bangkok, had a rough run at Bangkok where we lost both matches. And then as we went into split one, really feeling like we were growing and developing, we beat G2 those playoffs, lost them in the grand final, and then went to Toronto and won 3 matches. And then we went undefeated in stage 2, but then after that we really hit a wall and lost to NRG and G2 in the playoffs, and then lost to Giant X and XLG at champs. And so I think for us, in terms of the growth we hoped to get throughout the year, we really didn't get. So now as we got to the end of the season and a number of contracts were expiring, and really then having to make a decision about some of the young talent who are part of the organization, of really deciding now is the right time to really bring up some of those players and really try and get that blend of the experience of someone like John QT, with the upside potential of someone like Redux, and then bringing in Cortesia as well. So feeling like betting on some really talented young players, and having John QT as like the mentor of these 4 young players, and hopefully can really be developing something that over the next year or 2 can really start to grow.
Amazing. Talking about next year, you guys, of course, just announced the roster a couple of days ago, having 2 academy players, Cortesia coming from MBR, Keeping John, and Narrate from this year's roster. So first of all, I want to know about Qbert. It's a project, if I'm not mistaken, it was Redux idea. I think you mentioned this once. Yeah.
Yeah, that Redux put together a team for some off-season tournaments. And then as we started to see it go, we're really like seeing the benefit to the brand and the developing of Qbert as its own brand and its own merchandise line. And so it was really an opportunity to do the 2 things together, is develop some young talent and to help grow that brand.
Yeah, talking about it, we have now with Redux and Caio going up into Sentinels VCT. We have 3 players, 3 former Qbert players. Scuba winning champs with NRG at the start of last month, and now the boys joining the main roster on Sentinels. So how do you feel about the whole project, the idea of seeing young players develop and then going into VCT, and Scuba win his first ever split, winning champs? It's something amazing.
Yeah, I think in terms of what our hopes were going into this year, initially some players were a little reluctant initially about the fact that an academy team cannot win Ascension directly. And so I had that conversation with Scuba and said, well, the good news is that since we can't win Ascension, we're not going to hold you up if an opportunity comes for Tier 1. And so in the middle of the year, NRG was like making a couple of big changes. And so they acquired Scuba. He joined their team just in time for the Esports World Cup qualifier. And so they ended up going on a run there where they played like 10 matches through the Esports World Cup qualifiers and then the Esports World Cup itself. And they really got a lot of additional games in to really get that practice. And then they hit the ground running in stage 2, and obviously then went on an amazing run at champs.
Still talking about next year, you guys have another Brazilian coming back to Sentinels, the third Brazilian player in 4 years of partnership of VCT. So talk me through Cortesia, man, joining in, a super young player, a superstar for MIBR, a rookie player from MIBR joining Sentinels now as the third Brazilian player ever in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, as MIBR was rebuilding their roster and there became that opportunity for us to sign Cortesia, that he was somebody who really caught our attention last year, the energy he played with. And then at Champs, he played like a veteran. Like he did not play like a rookie at Champs. He was one of the highest rated players in Champs. I think he might have been the highest rated Sentinel player at Champs. And also, during Split 2, when MIBR's season was really having a tough run, there was a match against 100 Thieves where if they had lost, actually, and now it proved that if they had lost that match, they would not made it to Champs. And they were down 10-2 against 100 Thieves, and he just put the team on his back and was just like, no, we're going to win this match. And he really showed his leadership at such a young age. So for us, as we're going with a very young roster of someone who really has that mechanical skill, but also that leadership, really felt like the perfect person to be part of this new younger roster we were putting together.
As Cortez joined Sentinels, you guys, expand the brand once again to Brazil, as you guys did in 2023 with Saci and Pancada, and 24 with Saci. So how is this deal with Sentinels Brazil, this connection you guys built throughout the last 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, we've continued to have that focus. We have, one of our staff, Lorenzo, who is, who is in Brazil and focused on the region and constantly looking for how do we continue to build our fan base. I think one of the things we're constantly looking at is, I think the biggest complaint we get from Brazilian fans is the shipping of merchandise is so high. So we are looking at the possibility of creating a way to get some merchandise sourced locally so we don't have to deal with the shipping, because we would love to give that opportunity to Brazilian fans to have a more reasonable priced opportunity to be able to show their Sentinels fandom. So I think we've seen the passion from the Brazilian fans, obviously with Saci winning Masters Madrid, which was an amazing accomplishment. And so, trying to have that engagement with the Brazilian fan base is something that we're constantly talking about and focused on. And like I said, I think he's such a young talent that hopefully we have a very long run together.
I remember back in Lock-In when you guys came to Brazil, it was Saci and Pancada's first ever official tournament with Sentinels. You guys came to Brazil with a lot of jerseys to sell, and those weren't expensive at all. It was really cheap for the Brazilian fans. Was this part of the strategy to bring Sentinels into a new place, into a new country, into a new culture?
Yeah, our hope was, sometimes the merchandise is really about giving people the opportunity to connect with the brand, as much as just trying to generate revenue. And so in that circumstance, it was about how do we source them locally? How do we bring the cost down? And how do we share that with the fans? I think some of the other orgs were a little annoyed at the price we were selling them at, but we really wanted to give fans that opportunity to connect with the brand.
And I'm sure it was a huge success. So, talking about this new roster, of course, the huge news for Sentinels, and I believe the shocking news for everyone, was Zaken deciding to not keep us as a Sentinel for next year. So talk me through, how was this news for you, how you received his decision?
Well, I think, one of the conversations we were having with the coaching staff is they were looking at the possibility of moving Narrate to Duelist and Zekken to Smokes. And so the biggest challenge with that was, well, where would Redux play? And I think, we then were talking to other organizations who had reached out to basically say, well, wait, if Redux doesn't have a role, we'd be interested in him. And so there was a combination of factors. Now, certainly, I think for Zekken, he saw the opportunity to play with Aspas. I don't know if it's been officially announced at this point, but I think for him, that was just one of those opportunities that he could play with someone, who is maybe the greatest player to ever play the game. And so for us, we were having that issue at some point, right? When you're bringing along that young talent, well, when do you give them that opportunity? And so we didn't want to have the same thing that happened with Scuba of we developed the player, he was in Qbert Academy, and then it went off to NRG to win champs. And so I think we got to a place of where we would have loved to keep Zek in, and we certainly made him an offer to stay. But I think the great news for us was we had the depth with Redux here. And there's no question the early part of the season will probably be a little bumpy as it was for NRG last year, right? Like NRG, I think they came in 7th, 8th on kickoff and 7th, 8th on split one. And then they came in second, split two, qualified for champs, then went on a crazy run of champs. So I think the one thing I would say to fans is you're going to need to be patient. It's a young team. They got to learn each other. And so, we have our tournament. Sen City Classic starts Thursday, 1 o'clock Pacific time. And so on the first day, I think we play the third match. So fans should definitely be along for the ride, but appreciate the fact that we would expect that we'll have some bumps along the way and that it may take a little while for this team to come together. But the good news is we're playing in our tournament Thursday, Friday, Saturday this week, and then we're going to New York for the Red Bull home grounds the following week. So we'll have a reasonable amount of initial competition, and then we really can get back with the team and really start to practice, see what went right, what went wrong in these tournaments, and then try and get ready for the kickoff in January.
One thing I really love about Sentinels is the Sen City is probably the only organization right now doing their own off-season tournament, bringing other teams to play, to give a new shot for new players, to a first look into the new team. So how was this idea born? I think it's the third season right now with the Sen City. So how was this idea born?
Yeah, I think we're always looking for, okay, you've got a new roster. There's only so much you can get out of just running scrims with other teams. And also to really get that pressure of you're playing in front of an audience, we're streaming it out. There's a lot of people watching the stream. We have fans here in our office. Anyone who's in LA has the ability to come show up. And so just creating an environment where you get a better look at teams and how that roster starts to come together. And so initially we were looking for other opportunities of how to compete, and they just felt like a great way to get it started where you play 3 best of 3s no matter what. And so you get some good, some good activity in this window of time.
Amazing. A lot of people in Brazil, when they saw the teams that made to Sen City, were kind of asking, like, since you guys shared the office with MIBR, if MIBR were ever invited for the tournament. We all know Aspas is in Brazil, so how was this, choosing the teams and all this idea?
Yeah, we actually sent an invitation to most of the Americas teams. It really is all about who is in Los Angeles and who has a roster, right? Like there's a couple of the orgs who still haven't announced rosters. And there's a number of the teams where their players just aren't in LA or they're headed to other tournaments. So as we were like putting this year together, like each year has been different, right? The first year it was G2 who had just acquired the guard players with Moist Shopify and Oxygen, which of course was the team Redux was on at the time. Last year it was NRG, C9, and Evil Geniuses. And so this year it's Envy who just won the Ascension tournament, and then our own Qbert Academy, who also is playing in the Red Bull home ground. So both Envy and Qbert are in the Red Bull home ground qualifier that's on the 14th. And then the main roster is playing in the Red Bull home ground. So we just felt like since Qbert was going to be playing in that tournament, what better way to get ready than come play in this tournament? So 3 of the 4 teams are headed to Red Bull home ground the following week.
Amazing. So now talking about Sentinels, not only as a Valorant team, but as a whole organization, the future brings new stuff with Sentinels joining League of Legends, joining the LCS. So how was this idea, this opportunity to take the 100 Thieves slot into LCS and start investing in a new league?
Well, we are constantly looking as an organization is how do we grow our business and what games can we be in that help generate revenue? And so yesterday we announced we were exiting Marvel Rivals for the time being, since there hadn't really been a partnership program identified for next year. And so as we're trying, when we field teams, we have to find a way to generate enough revenue to pay for them. And so an opportunity came up where we could join as a partner team in the LCS and be part of League of Legends. And I think as we look at esports and the scene and the popularity of games, that there's no question that you have League of Legends and Valorant and Counter-Strike are just on a tier of their own. And so we've talked about potentially entering Counter-Strike. We talked about entering League of Legends. So the timing of this spot in League of Legends become available, that therefore prioritize getting into League of Legends in 2026. And so we'll be starting to put a roster together here over the next month. So at least they're not at the same time as we've gone through Roster Mania Valorant. We'll now start to put our roster together for League of Legends. Starting next week to start evaluating players as contracts start to expire there, and be ready to field a team for the 2026 season.
Amazing. I remember a couple months ago you gave an interview to Sheep Esports talking about Counter-Strike. Is there something you want to do, like with a new NA team into Counter-Strike? Maybe we all know how tough it is for the North American Counter-Strike scene right now, but is still a goal for you and for Sentinels to join CS in the future and bring the NA pride back?
Well, it's funny because I said the same thing to them, but it got picked up very aggressively about Counter-Strike, which is I said, we're constantly looking at Counter-Strike and League of Legends and figuring out a time to enter and an approach to enter. And so people were very excited about me saying we're looking to enter Counter-Strike. Now, like I said, that what happened shortly after that was an opportunity presented itself to join League of Legends. And so for us, that meant prioritizing League of Legends. And so we don't feel like we're going to be able to we wouldn't be able to do it justice to try, because we do a very small, lean staff here. So we didn't feel like we could do it justice trying to do both at once. And so that moved League of Legends in front because the opportunity was now. And so 2026 will really be about building a League of Legends team. And then sometime after that, we'll really evaluate and look to get into Counter-Strike. But it'll definitely not be a 2026 endeavor.
Okay, so, and now talking about the future, you guys already have a roster. Expectations are probably high for you and for the team. So I want to know what you expect for the next season in Valorant, at least.
Well, I think this season will probably be a lot more volatile. There'll be some lower lows, hopefully some higher highs. But I really think the key for this year is building this team so we know we have a group of players who are capable of winning a championship. And if not, by the end of the year, then figuring out, okay, what are the changes we do need to make, right? And so that is always the case of figuring out how to, whenever you're putting a group of players together who haven't played together before, of how do they gel together and how do they play off one another, and what changes do you have to make changes, or is this group the group that can actually win a championship together? So this year will definitely be a lot of learning, a lot of experimenting, and hopefully a lot of growth from the beginning of the year till the end.
Even though saci is not part of Sentinels anymore, he's with MIBR now, he's still a huge fan, supporting the team, talking to you guys. Was he part of the Cortesia idea at all? Because he was the one to tell MIBR to get Cortesia to the roster. So he was part of even though a little part of this idea of Cortesia sang into Sentinels?
No, he wasn't directly. I mean, certainly I didn't have any conversation with him in that window. It was one of those things that really came together as MIBR was figuring out their roster. And like I said, it seems like they were bringing Zekken in. And therefore he became available. And like I said, we just had observed ourselves in terms of his talent and his passion for the game. And so it was very clear to us there was a lot of upside potential in him.
Amazing. Rob, to wrap it up, I'll leave you the space to send a message to your friends, your family, the Sen City, of course. So space is yours, man.
Well, we always appreciate the love and support of our fans. They're a very passionate group, but I do know they're very committed to winning. And so I'm just asking that with a very young core group of people, you're going to have to be a little bit more patient, accept the fact that there'll probably be a few times during the early part of the year where you ask yourself, was this the right decision? And just saying, I think as you look at the players, you look at what they've accomplished in the past, even though they're very young players, you look at someone like Redux and what he accomplished in tier two, that we are very hopeful that as this group really starts to learn and grow and build together, that there is a lot of potential in this group.
Amazing, Rob. Thank you very much once again for being part of this interview, for giving me the opportunity, and I wish you and Sentinels a lot of luck, a lot of success in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And like I said, hopefully we at least get one win this weekend.